She was beautiful, successful, and obsessed. A yoga instructor with a perfect Instagram life, a thriving wellness brand, and a smile that could light up a room. But beneath the surface of downward dogs and meditation retreats, a darkness was growing, a jealousy so consuming it would drive her to pull a trigger 3 times, ending the life of a rising star athlete whose only crime was falling for the wrong man. And when the walls closed in, when police came knocking and evidence mounted, she didn't break down, she didn't confess. She ran, across borders, into hiding, and under the knife of a back-alley surgeon who would help her become someone else entirely. This is the story of Caitlin Armstrong, the beautiful yoga instructor who murdered her romantic rival, fled to Central America, changed her face to escape justice, and thought she could outrun a crime that had already made national headlines. But what she didn't know was that the U.S. Marshals were closing in, and her new face wouldn't save her from a 90-year sentence. Austin, Texas, May 11th, 2022. The city's vibrant wellness community was thriving, a world of yoga studios, organic cafes, and influencers documenting their journey to enlightenment one post at a time. At the center of this scene was Caitlin Armstrong, a 35-year-old yoga instructor whose life looked perfect from the outside. She taught classes at local studios, ran a small real estate side business, and spent her evenings with her longtime boyfriend Colin Strickland, a professional cyclist who had his own growing following in Austin's competitive sports world. To anyone scrolling through her social media, Caitlin had it all: the body, the career, the relationship, the aesthetic. But perfection, as always, was an illusion. Because Colin Strickland had a wandering eye. And in the fall of 2021, during what he would later describe as a brief break from Caitlin, he had met someone new. Her name was Mariah Wilson, but everyone called her Mo. She was 25 years old, a rising star in the professional cycling world, with the infectious personality and a fearless approach to competition that was earning her national recognition. Mo Wilson was everything Caitlin feared: younger, accomplished, adored by everyone who met her. And worst of all, Colin couldn't stop talking about her. Even after he and Caitlin had officially gotten back together, even after he promised the relationship with Mo was over, Caitlin could feel it. The way his eyes lit up when Mo's name came up. The way he checked his phone a little too often. The way he seemed distracted, distant, as if part of him was still somewhere else. For months, Caitlin tried to ignore it. She doubled down on her yoga practice, posted more inspirational quotes about letting go and finding peace. But inside, a different story was unfolding. Jealousy wasn't just gnawing at her, it was consuming her. And in early May 2022, when Mo Wilson flew to Austin for a cycling event, that jealousy would erupt into violence. On the evening of May 11th, Colin Strickland picked Mo up from her friend's place where she was staying. They went swimming at a local pool, grabbed dinner, and by all accounts, it was casual, friendly, nothing romantic, or so Colin would later insist. He dropped Mo off at her friend's house around 8:30 p.m., said goodnight, and drove home. Less than an hour later, someone knocked on the door of that same house. Mo answered, and within seconds, 3 gunshots shattered the quiet Austin night. Mo Wilson, the 25-year-old athlete who had been on the verge of greatness, was dead, shot once in the head and twice in the chest at point-blank range. The discovery of Mo Wilson's body sent shockwaves through Austin and the national cycling community. Her friend, who had been inside the house during the shooting, called 911 immediately, but by the time paramedics arrived, Mo was gone. The scene was brutal, efficient, personal. This wasn't a robbery. Nothing had been taken. This was an execution. Detectives with the Austin Police Department began their investigation with the most obvious question: who would want Mo Wilson dead? She had no enemies, no criminal history, no disputes with anyone in the cycling world. She was, by every account, universally loved. But as investigators dug deeper, a pattern began to emerge. Security camera footage from a neighbor's house captured a dark SUV arriving at the residence shortly before the shooting. The vehicle circled the block once, as if the driver was confirming the location, then parked briefly before leaving immediately after the gunshots. Within 48 hours, investigators had identified the vehicle, a Jeep Grand Cherokee registered to Caitlin Armstrong. When detectives cross-referenced phone records, the picture became even clearer. On the night of the murder, Caitlin's phone had been in the area of Mo Wilson's location. GPS data from a fitness tracking app she used showed her movements through Austin, and the timeline matched perfectly with the shooting. Caitlin Armstrong had been there, a Authorities brought her in for questioning on May 12th, less than 24 hours after the murder. She sat across from detectives in a small interview room, calm and composed, and denied everything. She claimed she had been home all night. She said she didn't know Mo Wilson. She insisted the investigators had the wrong person, but her answers were too smooth, too rehearsed. And when detectives mentioned the evidence, the GPS data, the vehicle identification, her composure began to crack. Still, they didn't have enough to arrest her. Not yet. Texas law required a warrant, and prosecutors wanted the case to be airtight. So Caitlin Armstrong walked out of that police station a free woman, and within hours, she made a decision that would define the next 43 days of her life. She was going to run. Caitlin Armstrong didn't waste time. On May 13th, the day after her police interview, she sold her Jeep for $12,200 in cash. She deleted her social media accounts. She drained her bank accounts. And on May 14th, she boarded a flight from Austin to New York City using her sister's name and passport. From there, she flew to Costa Rica, disappearing into the crowded beach towns and expat communities of Central America. For 43 days, Caitlin Armstrong was a ghost. U.S. Marshals issued a federal warrant for her arrest on murder charges, but she had already vanished. Investigators believed she was hiding somewhere in Latin America, but Costa Rica is a big country, and without cooperation from local authorities, finding one woman with a new identity was nearly impossible. But Caitlin wasn't just hiding. She was transforming. In late May, at a small medical clinic in the beach town of Santa Teresa, she underwent plastic surgery, a nose job, subtle changes to her facial structure. The goal was simple: become unrecognizable. She dyed her hair darker, adopted a new name, and started working odd jobs at hostels and yoga studios, blending into the transient community of backpackers and remote workers. For a moment, it seemed like she had succeeded. She had escaped the United States, changed her appearance, and was living under the radar in a country with no extradition treaty for murder cases at the time. She posted no photos, made no contact with family. She had erased herself, but investigators hadn't given up. The U.S. Marshals Service, known for their relentless pursuit of fugitives, continued tracking her digital footprint. They monitored financial transactions. They worked with Interpol. They followed tips from travelers who thought they had seen her. And finally, on June 29, 2022, they got the break they needed. A tip came in from someone who had stayed at the same hostel as Caitlin in Santa Teresa. They recognized her, even with the changed appearance, because of a distinctive yoga tattoo on her arm that she hadn't been able to alter. Within hours, U.S. Marshals and Costa Rican authorities raided the hostel. Caitlin Armstrong was found hiding in a back room, and after a brief struggle, she was taken into custody. When they processed her, the evidence of her desperation was undeniable. Her face showed the fresh scars of recent surgery. Her hair was darker. She had fake identification documents. But her fingerprints, the one thing she couldn't change, confirmed what investigators already knew. Caitlin Armstrong, the yoga instructor who thought she could escape justice by changing her face, was going home to face a murder charge. Caitlin Armstrong's trial began in October 2023, over a year after Mo Wilson's murder. The courtroom in Austin was packed with Mo's family, friends from the cycling community, and reporters covering what had become a national story of jealousy, violence, and a desperate international manhunt. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented GPS data showing Caitlin's phone near the crime scene. They showed surveillance footage of her vehicle circling the block. They brought in ballistics experts who confirmed the murder weapon had been fired from close range, a personal rage-fueled attack. And they detailed her elaborate escape, the fake passport, the plastic surgery, the 43 days on the run. The defense tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial, that Caitlin had fled out of fear, not guilt, that the plastic surgery was for personal reasons unrelated to the crime, but the timeline was too damning, the motive too clear. Caitlin Armstrong had killed the woman who threatened her relationship, and then she had run. The most emotional moment of the trial came when Mo Wilson's mother, Karen, delivered her victim impact statement. She spoke of her daughter's dreams, her kindness, her love of life. She described the hole Mo's death had left in their family. And she looked directly at Caitlin Armstrong and said, "You didn't just take my daughter. You took our future." Caitlin showed no visible reaction. Throughout the trial, she had remained composed, emotionless, as if she were watching someone else's story unfold. But when the jury returned after less than 2 hours of deliberation with a guilty verdict on first-degree murder, something shifted. For the first time, her mask cracked. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled. At sentencing, the judge handed down 90 years in prison. No possibility of parole. Caitlin Armstrong, once a yoga instructor who preached peace and balance, would spend the rest of her life behind bars. As she was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, reporters noted that her carefully altered face, the face she had paid to create in a desperate attempt to disappear, now bore the unmistakable expression of someone who had finally understood the weight of her actions. The beautiful yoga instructor who murdered the woman who replaced her had changed her face to escape. But in the end, justice had a longer memory than any surgery could erase. Caitlin Armstrong is currently serving her sentence in a Texas state prison. Mo Wilson's family established a foundation in her name to support young athletes pursuing their dreams. And in Austin, the cycling community continues to remember Mo not for how she died, but for how she lived, fearlessly, joyfully, and with a love of life that no act of jealousy could ever truly extinguish. If you found this story as shocking as I did, hit that subscribe button. We dive deep into cases like this every week, stories of crimes that seem impossible until you see the evidence unfold. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Could Caitlin have really believed she'd get away with it? And what case should I cover next? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.